Hi, y'all. What time is it? What is time? What is space? These are the questions I am inspired to ask today. So when I was looking ahead to the chart for this Wednesday, since I'm now committed to weekly Wednesdays, which will broadcast at 11:11 a.m. Pacific, Um, I saw a bunch of things, including that, at least from the modern point of view, the moon is void of course, as it was last week when I launched this ship. So we should expect them to kind of meander a bit. So may it be. That's my style. Um, anyway, next week, the moon will not be void of course on Wednesday. So I think actually, just to keep the tradition alive, I might go live next week on Tuesday. That's especially because I'll be on a plane on Wednesday heading out for a bit of a pilgrimage and an investigation across the country and some time away from work in that. I want to say also, before I completely dive in here, that if you head over, I'll say this again in a bit, but to GeminiBrett.com, that's my website. Let me show you where you will find yourself. We do one of these. So GeminiBrett.com. Oh, this is the courses page. By the way, I'm going to add a couple things to this pretty soon. But if you go to the events page, for those of you who live in California, and especially up here near the Bay or in Sacramento, I will be for NCGR Sacramento doing an in-person eclipse workshop and eclipse cycles on Sunday, March 24th, followed by a night sky training. So you can learn much more about that at geminibrett.com/events. But there at the top, you will find this. I'm going to be offering a free webinar this Saturday, March 9th, 2024. It will start at 9 a.m. Pacific time on dispositor trees. So I invite you to come join us. You can click right here for a free Zoom webinar. And then afterwards, we'll switch over towards like a Zoom meeting style so we can have more of a community discussion. So there's both of those to be able to register. I should change that language. That one's actually not registered. It'll take you right to that thing. I just want to make sure that people who maybe come to the webinar and step away for a bit, don't get lost in space, and have a link to get to the community meeting afterwards. At some point, I'm going to be moving these to a different place that's going to be a little bit easier to deal with. But right now, they're going to be on Zoom. One more thing, if you go to GeminiBrett.com/sessions, I'm offering an 18% discount. Those of you in the know around eclipses and eclipse cycles and the Saros will know why I've chosen 18%. So book any session with me before the total solar eclipse on April 8th and use the coupon code SHADOWPLAY. One word, okay? SHADOWPLAY. And you'll get an 18% discount on whatever I do. I just want to check in with folks. Hi, Nancy. Nice to see your name here. And Shauna, the real not Brody. That's fun. Right on. And that's fun to hear you were saying you were looking here at 11:11. Oh, but CST, so the right time, but the wrong space time. Cool. And that helps me get back on track a little bit. Julie, it's nice to see you coming in from New Zealand, where it's got to be pretty early tomorrow. I love how that works in our weird time zone thing today. So again, when I was looking at the chart today, I was like, what do I want to talk about on this weekly Wednesday transmission? And what I was caught by actually was the date. So March 6th, 2024. So now some of you will call that the 6th of March because days are shorter than months, aren't they? Right. But here in the States where we do things backwards, we just write 3/6/24. So I looked at that and I saw 36 and 24, and I saw much more. We're going to do a little bit of number magic play today. And so I want to help you find the 1 and the 0 in 3/6/24 as well. Let me just write in the comments here, 3, 6, 24 equals 3 plus 6 plus 2 plus 4. Actually, you know what I like to write is equals equals when we're playing like number magic games like this, because that's kind of ridiculous. So 3, 6, 24 equals 3 plus 6 plus 2 plus 4, which equals 15, which equals 1 plus 5, which equals 6. Did I do that math right? You know, a really fun thing. Let me just put that on the screen. A really fun thing about doing this kind of number play, which some call digital roots or Pythagorean roots even in like numerological traditions, is when you have 9s in the number, you can kind of just throw them away. So 9 is everything and nothing. You might be asking, what does this have to do with space-time and time-space? Because that's what I wrote this chat would be about. Well, everything and nothing. So why is 9 everything and why is 9 nothing? This is all just number game, but they're really fun number games, and they're not ones that we were taught in school, where we just were taught that 1 plus 1 is 2. Boring. How can you add oneness to anything? Is it not already everything? Or is it nothing? Okay, so why is 9 everything and also nothing? And it goes like this. If you take the numbers that precede 9 and add their digits, so 1 plus 2 plus 3 plus 4 plus 5 plus 6 plus 7 plus 8, 1 plus 2 plus 3 plus 4 plus 5 plus 6 plus 7 plus 8 is 36. And then when you get a double-digit number like 36, you can break it down further to its so-called digital root, right? So 36 is 3 and 6. So I like to write it this way: 36 equals 3 plus 6. And 3 plus 6 is 9. So 9 is everything because it is equal to the Pythagorean root, or the digital root, of the sum of all numbers that precede it. Unless you believe in negative numbers, but they're really not numbers at all. Anyway, let me not trip too deep on that one right now, or we'll really journey far out to space. Okay, so we have this strange thing that 9 is everything. I mean, that seems like a stretch, right? But the truth is 1 plus 2 plus 3 plus 4 plus 5 plus 6 plus 7 plus 8 equals 36. We can take 36 and look at it as 3 and 6, and 3 plus 6 equals 9. So 9 at least is equal to the digital root of the sum of the numbers that precede it. All right, why is 9 nothing? Well, let's continue playing that kind of digital or Pythagorean root game, and let's do it with a number like 19. Great number, 19. 19, you will find, is the number that is the card of the sun in the major arcana of most tarot decks. Yes, and there's a very astronomical reason for this, that it takes 19 years for silver and gold polyrhythms to synchronize. What? Well, silver, the silver year, which is 12 lunations, is 364 days. And that, of course, is not a year. It's about 11 days off. So I think I said 364. The silver year is 354 days, 12 lunations, which are about 29 and a half days each, okay? And so what happens is after like 3 years, you basically need to add a leap month, because you're now 33 days off. But you can't just add a 33-day month, because the lunation is 29 and a half days. So the way we keep that pace, if you want to align your calendar's months to moons, is you alternate between 29 and 30-day months. 29, 30, 29, 30, keeping that 29 and a half day pace, you see. But 12 of those is 354 days, and so it's not quite a solar year. And you better honor that too if you like things like food, survival, okay? But we want to play with silver, moon, and gold, sun, yeah? And amazingly, their rhythms do eventually synchronize, especially because the solar year is what we teach at like 365 and a quarter days. It's more like 365.242199. It's the tropical year, the seasonal year, sun through the tropical signs. 365.242199 in a lunation, so new moon to new moon, on average 29.53059 days. Can you imagine that those numbers synchronize? Well, they do, and they do every 19 years. 19 years is almost exactly equal to 235 lunations. This is the code of silver and gold. I'm reading a quote here. We have the 13 moon calendar and 28-day months. Well, the moon does not 28. It just doesn't. It's kind of somewhere between a sidereal month and a synodic month. So I'm not like, I don't even want to go there right now, but just that. And also 1328 is 364, which a year it is not. Anyway, before I get into no on 13, which is probably a great topic for another time, especially these days, maybe it will come back to life when I speak about the decans in a little bit. Let me be with just 19, and to honor, like, in true form, in this kind of void of course moon ness of this transmission, I'm gonna like follow shiny stars to this place and that, and hopefully find myself back. I have a Gemini mantra that sounds like this: these many branches I'm called to climb all emanate from the same trunk. So if I encourage you to jump from this branch to another one with me, if you're willing to go, I promise you we will do our best to show how they all connect. So anyway, the only reason why I wanted to bring in 19 as an example is this. Let's do a digital root with 19. So with a 2-digit number like 19, you just do 1 plus 9. Well, what's 1 plus 9? 10, right? Well, 10 is still a 2-digit number. So you go 1 plus 0, right? 10, 1 plus 0, and that's 1. So we'll hear this in like some of the kind of number magic things that I'll read from. That 10 is like the oneness again. Okay, so anyway, when you do a digital root of 19 or a Pythagorean root of 19, you get 1. All right, well, let's do that for 29. What's 2 plus 9? 11. But then 11 is 1 plus 1. It's 2. So 29 turned into 2. Well, 39 will turn into 3 and 49 into 4. 449 will turn into 8. How do I know so quickly? Because you can just take the 9 and take it away. And then I'm left with 449 left with 44, and 4 plus 4 is 8. Let's just take that one through, and then we're going to move along. Okay, 449. Well, 4 plus 4 is 8. 8 plus 9 is 17. But 17 is 1 and 7. 1 plus 7 is 8. Anytime you have a 9, you can take it away. Okay, so when I'm looking at, and that's why 9 is nothing. 9 is everything because it is a number that is equal to the digital or Pythagorean root of the sum of the numbers before it. 1 plus 2 plus 3 plus 4 plus 5 plus 6 plus 7 plus 8 equals 36. But 36 is a 9. 3 plus 6 equals 9. In our weird number play that some call digital roots, some call Pythagorean roots, there's other names for it too. So I'm looking at the calendar today. If and when I play with that whole Gregorian trip, and I'm seeing 3, 6, 2, 4, so I'm like, wow, that's like 36. That's like the sum of 1 through 8, and that's a 9. And I'm looking at 24. I'm like, that's a 6. But I'm also thinking 34 decans and 24 hours. And it inspired me to go on this trip about origins of some of the timekeeping techniques that these days we totally take for granted as astrologers, as human beings. And it really brings us back to the very origin of timekeeping and horoscopic astrology. So we're going to take that adventure in our time machine today. There's a hence leap years comment here. That's not, so that would be like the 365 and a quarter days is why we need a leap year. Not anything to do with 13 and 28. So, but maybe you weren't commenting on that. All right, anyway, I told you I would show you the 1 and the O in this trip too. All right. Well, 3-6-24, which I know some of you will write 6-3-24 anyway, because you understand that days are shorter than months or shorter than years. But anyway, here in the States, we just do things wrong. And so we're going 3-6-24. I remember there was some time ago when the New Age really came strong at me for 8-8-8 Lionsgate, right? And that'll be maybe a tale to spin in August. But why was it 8-8-8? Because it was August 8th, 2017. So 8-8-17. And 17 is 1 and 7. It's an 8. So they were like 8-8-8 Stargate. And I was like, well, what about the 2? Because 2017 is 2017. It seems like you should have done that in 2015, y'all. Because 2015 2015, 2 plus 0 plus 1 plus 5 is 8. Yes, we're going to play with numbers today. Anyway, so can I really call this March 6, 2024 thing 3-6-24? What about that 20? So let's play with that. Let's go 3-6-2024 equals 3 plus 6 plus 2 plus 0 plus 2 plus 4. Let's put that thing on the screen. Oh my gosh, I should have copied it first. Wish I could. So, well, what's the result? First of all, let me show an easy way to do that. Remember, 9s are everything, but they're also nothing. So when you see 3-6 in a number like that, or in a bunch of numbers that you're going to sum to play number games, you can just say the 3 and 6 is 9 and put it away. So then I'm left with 2-0-2-4. Okay, well, I get 8. And we want to speak about 8 today. But I also wanted to find 1. And you know what? I feel like there's too much space and time to explore in our time machine to trip on the numbers. And I've probably lost a bunch of people nerding out on number play anyway. So I'm gonna switch directions here a little bit. I want to read a little line to you from the second book in the series called Dune by Frank Herbert. Some of you, like me, will probably be really Dune activated again right now because Denis Villeneuve's Dune Part 2 just hit the screens. Scorpiana and I went last week. I thought it was amazing. But I'm a huge Dune nerd. I'm a big fan of the Duneverse. I read Dune when I was pretty young, probably 15, something like that, I'm thinking. And it really changed me. It really birthed a philosopher in me, I think, in many ways. And by the way, the free class that I'm going to teach this Saturday, and you can sign up for it at geminibrett.com/events. Let me just put that link in the chat for you. In some places, it won't really work. It won't be a link. So just open up a browser and type in geminibrett.com/events. All right. In other places, this will be a thing you can push and it will link you over there. When you do, you'll see right at the top of the screen, register for a free webinar. And I hope to see you there. I'm just remembering that I'm going to edit that page as long as we're multitasking here, weren't we? And make the second thing that says register for the community discussion, just say, click here to join the community discussion afterwards. But I have to be able to spell. Live website updates during a live stream. We're pioneering. We're moving into new territory here, friends. All right. So anyway, I was looking at the chart of Frank Herbert, who's the author of Dune, and he has this really cool happening in his chart in regards to what we call connections through dispositorship, as we display in what we call dispositor trees. So especially because in a free session that I taught last week, which you can actually see on my YouTube page, just go to the live streams. By the way, geminibrett.com/YouTube will take you right to the live streams section of my YouTube realm, because mostly I'm transmitting there live, like I am right now. Some of you are there. Some of you are in other places. So geminibrett.com/YouTube, if you want to go see the Void of Course Moon teaching from last week, which ended up being a lot longer than I wanted it to be, because I went really void in many places, which actually I kind of had planned to do. Because if you're going to talk about the Void of Course Moon, act like it, right? Like that's trickster kung fu. That's drunken master kung fu. He says as he drinks tea again, right? Like be the thing that you're trying to describe, especially if it's somewhat insane. I don't know how to be a dispositor tree, but I'll do my best this Saturday, Saturn's Day, March 9th at 9 a.m. Pacific. Wait, Saturn's Day. Which reminds me, I want to talk about planetary hours today. So we better get on track. All right, but I thought before we get into some of the technical stuff, I actually even planned to do this before we got all number nerd, that maybe we could speak about something mystical. Because our journey today is going to get into some history, which itself is deep mystery. We really don't know so much about the source code of this cosmic craft we call astrology these days. And about timekeeping techniques. The rear view is quite foggy, friends. So even in the history, there is mystery. But as we're exploring like time, some people will just check out right away, because of course the teachings of the New Cage say that time doesn't even exist. Well, I say that just recently reflecting on some wrinkles that I see in the screen. And I'm wondering if like I need to sign up for a different religion to help me not age, because of course there would be no aging if there was no time in this space. I believe we have incarnated into a place with at least with the appearance of time and space, because I feel that these are necessary for growth. And I personally believe that's what we're here for. We are here to grow. And that I don't think you can grow or make moves in any place that doesn't at least offer the appearance of time and space. So I really appreciate some of those spiritual teachings around time is just, fake, and it will keep you trapped in duality or stuck on the wheel of incarnation, and you're meant to transcend this and get back to timelessness and oneness. There's something beautiful to that. It also sounds kind of boring, Jack. Do you know what I mean? And I think it's really trying to get away from a place that I imagine your soul chose And I think why? So you can grow. But maybe I'm wrong. Maybe I get to learn a thing when I die. I don't know, but I'm not trying to accelerate that timeline. And I will just say, in my experience, I watch the sun rise and set, and I see the flower tree out here. Well, it's actually an apple tree, but right now it's a flower tree, and later it will be a fruit tree. Because I also experience years and seasons. I watch the moon wax and wane, right? There are plenty of astronomical expressions of time in this beautiful Earth space. So the timekeeping traditions have so much to do, not only with like aligning ourselves as living vows to the marriage of heaven and earth, but have to do with the necessity of our survival. All right. Anyway, I want to read to you from page 7 of Dune Messiah, which is the second book in this Dune series. And I'm going to actually leave a couple names out of this because I don't want to like do spoiler stuff in case you haven't read these Dune books, which I really encourage, or see the films. And Dune Part 3, if they make it, and they will be about this text, Dune Messiah, which is a pretty heavy thing. All right, so let's see. I'm gonna leave some names out of it. Let me put some names in, and I'm gonna grab some names from chat here because why not? All right, so Sarah and PK. So if you won't mind, please being substitutes here. And it's then gonna sound like such a rich store of myths enfolds PK, the Mentat Emperor, and his sister, Sarah, that it is difficult to see the real persons behind these veils. But there were, after all, a man born PK and a woman born Sarah. Their flesh was subject to space and time. And even though their oracular powers placed them beyond the usual limits of time and space, they came from human stock. They experienced real events which left real traces upon a real universe. I dig that. And it's an interesting use of the word real, isn't it? Hey, PK, thanks, and Sarah, for subconsciously volunteering your names for me to use there. I don't know that you did. When I hear the name PK, I actually think of somebody whose P stands for Paul, as is the star of that phrase that we just heard from Frank Herbert's Dune Messiah, right? So look, here are people who developed these oracular powers. They were like literally able to see into the future, many versions of it, you know? And yet here they were in space and time, in human bodies, coming from human stock, subject to time and space, in a real universe, in real bodies, and all of these things. Aren't you? There's this thing that Alan Watts says, a teacher who I won't meet, at least in these bodies, but I often meet in the dream, right? Alan Watts talks about this, like you're sitting at the foot of the guru and you know she can see right through you. She sees your mess and all of this lust and trickery and whatnot, like the corruption of your mind, you know? And you're tripping about this, right? I've had that experience. And he's like, Guru, she's not looking at that. She's like, oh, I see you, Brahma, right? I see you, Spirit. I see this fantastic little mask you chose to wear this time, right? At that time, in this space, in that way, right? Fun fact, by the way, like astrologers these days teach that the ascendant is just like this mask that you wear and it's not the real you, which I really try to, well, that's not my astrology. That whole idea of mask, it comes from the word persona. And right. And so I think your ascendant's much more than some mask. It's like literally your persona, it's your incarnation. Anyway, let's just leave that there. So I like this idea that even these folks who had like kind of leveled up and gone full oracular and gone into the space, the ability to see the future, and maybe you're like this, like they're still from human stock and in human bodies, and right, and therefore are subject to real experiences in the real world. So is the world real? Because the people who are telling me that there is no time, like they tend to come from a place that would say that this place is not real, right? And you know, like a modern version of that is we're living in the matrix, it's all a simulation. Ancient versions of that is like this is just like the in-between or the training space to get to the next realm or whatever. You know, there's so many ways to say this that we don't have to get into it together right now. Distracted by some genius comments here, but I want to do anything I can to try to stay on track. Okay, so let's talk about number magic. Where in the numbers are the real world? I'm going to read to you from a couple places and then just offer like what I found. A lot of this through my study of number and of especially one of our sister sciences, which is number in space, and that's geometry. Now that word terrifies some people. And so let me say sacred geometry. That might be easier for the mystic these days to receive. But I'll just say that I very much stumbled into learning astrology and deepening my quest through studying the quadrivium, even though I had never heard that word. But the quadrivium, like the diamond of the sacred sciences, has astronomy at the top. Astronomy, which I like to teach as the measurable side of the heavenly happenings. Astrology being the rainbow bridge between that and correspondences, which is the immeasurable quality of the heavens, where astronomy is the measurable quantity of the heavens. I believe what we call these days astronomy and astrology actually are different things. I prefer to say astronomy and correspondences, and astrology is the thing that connects the two. But astronomy is the measurable, like a line which you can put a ruler to, whereas correspondences is the immeasurable, like a curve, which you cannot, right? How do we find the perimeter or the circumference of a circle? If it was a square, you just take your ruler to it because it's made of lines. For a circle, you have to play with transcendental numbers like pi, unless it's the kind of circle you could cut and stretch out and turn it into a line. Anyway, that would maybe take me on a trips of ones and zeros that I feel would be best reserved for another time, because I mean for these things not to go longer than an hour, and the clock is ticking. If you believe that time exists. Okay. Let me read. This is from a book that showed up recently that I'm interested in investigating. This is The 32 Secret Paths of Solomon by Timothy Hogan, who a friend of mine turned me into recently. He gives this like on one page, and interestingly, page 75, well, 7 and 5 is 12. This is just like 1 through 10. And he goes 1, the monad and unity, God's source. I should say this is preceded by, the Pythagoreans took it a step further. So obviously this is preceded by something I will not read, and may add up all the final numbers in something to reduce it. Thus 365 becomes 3 plus 6 plus 5, which is 14. And then 14 is 1 and 4. So 1 plus 4 equals 5. And so 365 is a 5. You and I know, by the way, we could have gotten there really quickly, because 365, you got 3 and 6, and the 3 and 6 is a 9. So just throw that away and you're left with 5, you see? Nines are nothing. but they're also everything. Okay, anyway, so the root value is 5. The Pythagoreans associated several qualities to the numbers 1 through 10. Here are just a few, and I appreciate that. These are just a few. Okay, so 1, the monad, unity, God, source. I like to say spirit, personally, for the oneness. 2, the dyad and duality, opposites, heaven and earth. We could say up and down, in and out, right? The triad, 3, harmonium, reconciliation, third reaction point from interaction of dualities. Okay, so we're starting to get weird. But importantly, here we go, 4, the tetrad, matter, nature, stability. These things that in that Frank Herbert bit, we were hearing as the real, like real experiences in the real universe where there's real agings and the sunrises and we go through seasons and these kinds of things. 4-ness, okay? So moving on, I'll just go through these 5. The pentad, man incarnated, let's say human incarnated, quintessence, lack of strife, light. Interesting. 6, the hexad, union of material and spiritual, mystical marriage, gnosis, divine knowledge. 7, heptad, the completed cycle, universal power, due measure, completion. 8, the octad, steadfastness, harmony on an earthly or cosmic level. 9, the Aeneid, assimilation, all opposite forces return to source, earthly perfection, perfection of the cosmos. 10, the decad, eternity, God in manifestation, all, divine omnipresence, return to unity. I'm going to read just a little bit further. Finally, there was another Pythagorean method that was used in the past, and that was to add up the sum of all the numbers within a number. So, for example, the number 4, sacred to the Pythagoreans, and what they took their oaths on, was a symbol of material world and is composed of 1, 2, 3, 4. And 1 plus 2 plus 3 plus 4 equals 10. There's this thing, it's whispered that Pythagoras would say, do you know how to count 1, 2, 3, 4, 10? Which is like this, what? Anyway, so therefore 4, or the material world, has the complete potential of the eternity of God in manifestation, because that's how they described 10, at least in this shortened expression of it. The decad, eternity, God in manifestation, all define omnipresence. Return to unity. Why return to unity? Because 10 is 1 and 0. 1 plus 0 is 1. So we start all over again. I mean, interesting in astrology, where we're working with, in a way, a duodecimal system, right? Not 10, but 12. I'll get back to why I'm flashing my hands on the screen. So 12-ness, right? If you play like within this context of digital roots, at least in the base 10 system, then we do this thing where you kind of get to 9, like the 9th house, and you get to 10, but 10 is a 1, 11 is a 2, 12, 1 plus 2 is a 3, right? So you kind of get this like weird thing. We live, on and I now at a place, it's 3684 May Road, right? So one of the reasons why I was sold is like 36, that's 9, 84, that's 12. May, hey, isn't the sun in Gemini in May? This is our place, right? Because I'm like, that's how I follow the signs, y'all. Anyway, you know, I appreciate like 9-ness. Like I have many friends who are very awakened and awakened through Enneagram. Some Gurdjieffian friends come from that space. I've seen, you know, like the Tesla 9 stuff on YouTube, which is also super fun. And I'm very much a 12E kind of character, yet I was raised in a 10 world, right? I want to say there was a thing you might have experienced me when I was reading this kind of like 6 as heaven and earth. right? What do you see, right? The hexad, union of material and spiritual, mystical marriage, gnosis, divine knowledge. Because literally, I was just reading in one of my personal favorite transmissions of number, which is in John Anthony West's Serpent in the Sky. This morning, that's 7. Let's see here. 7 signifies the union of spirit and matter. It's like, wait, I think I just read that about 6 in this other book. Yes, it's like that in the mystical study, right? Many ways to pet the cosmic cat. So anyway, he goes, 7 signifies the unit of spirit and matter, of 3 and 4. So he's calling 3 spirit and 4 matter. It starts getting weird in this transmission once you get to 7 or maybe even to 6. But I want to, as I said I would before, kind of express where I'm at with these numbers now. A lot of this is informed through geometry and just playing with the compass. Well, this is a heavy statement, but they say when you put the compass in your hand, you become God. And the idea is you're studying creation through the act of creating. And by the way, like sweeping circles will lead you very quickly to the pattern that we now often call the seed of life, which is 7 circles, but 6 around 1, which creates 2 flowers of 6 petals that are phased by 30 degrees. It's the zodiac. And it's the 12 born through 7. I'll just say in a mystical way, as 7 is born through 3. And it really is like why I like to share that creation creates in 12s, and like this is the zodiac in life. Now, that is something we also hear when we study number in time. So let me talk more about that quadrivium diamond, as I often do. So at its peak is astronomy, the measurable side of the heavenly happenings. Well, astronomy is called number in time and space. And therefore, it is composed of number in time, which is harmony, and number in space, which is geometry, and those of number itself, which they called arithmetic. I know that's a word that just sounds like 1 + 1 is 2. Well, that's the quantity, the measurable number. But what about the quality, the immeasurable number, where 1 is oneness? And there's no such thing as oneness plus anything, because oneness is everything. Now, what if we encourage the kids to contemplate oneness before we gave them this measurable quantity thing of 1 + 1 = 2? What would this world be? Well, 1 + 1 = 2 helps us grow up and get away from that mystical connection that we had when we came in, because there's something about forgetting it so that when you remember it, it's more than it once was. Is that true? Anyway, as I play with circles and look at 2 circles, right? That's like vesicas, the cosmic egg they create in between. Contemplate Venn diagram if you're not aware of the image of vesica. I just want to, Jen writes, this is the most magical mystery school 101 course. No, this is a meandering from one place to the next. When I teach this as a course, it's much more organized and with a lot of visuals, but I appreciate you saying that. Anyway, so let me just go quickly. Like 1 is oneness. 2 is, and I first heard this from my friend Adam, the not 2. There is no yin without the yang. There is no up without the down. There is no in without the out. And Alan Watts is just the best, one to listen to about that stuff. It's so great. Well, what is 3? And we heard in this text, it was like, well, so the dyad and duality, opposites, heaven and earth. The triad, harmonium, reconciliation, and third reaction point from interactions of the dualities, right? Which is interesting. But I appreciate, and this is like something that I really learned first and foremost from Serpent in the Sky, and it encouraged me to take kind of a different geometrical path, which I love to teach as well. I rather than show it, I like to get people to get themselves there, always. But anyway, what the third thing is it's like the force between the not 2. And the model that I often use, because I'm a saxophonist, is to make saxotone, we need saxophone and saxophonist. They are this not two. And they are drawn to one another. Like there's this like sexual need, as John Anthony West describes it in Serpent in the Sky, which, by the way, really is like his transmission in a more readable way of the work of the great Schwaller de Lubitz, as he very clearly states in the text. Serpent in the Sky, the high wisdom of ancient Egypt, highly recommended by John Anthony West. All right, anyway, so that this threeness is this force between the two things, like the mother and the father, right? Like they need to come together, and then the fourth is the creation, right? Hey, Kaiba. All right, anyway, so we have the saxophone, the saxophonist, they need to come together. That's the three. And then the four is the tone they create, saxotone. It's manifest, it's in the real world. But I call it noise. That for me is the four. It vibrates the medium. If a tree falls in the woods and no one's there to hear it, does it make a noise? No. Yes. But it does not make a sound. It makes a noise. It vibrates the medium. There are things, if you were there to measure it, right, which you could see amplitude, frequency, whatever. But measuring it is experiencing it. Now it becomes sound. Okay. Because if I, la da 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 dee da da, some of you are like, ah, he's out of tune. Or some of you are like, wow, he just did this thing that's in this particular mode or whatever, you know. You all experience that little ditty in a different way because you are you. So there was noise and it's this measurable quantity, but sound is the immeasurable quality. And for me, that's what the five is. And it's why five is beautiful and light and amazing and it animates, but it's also kind of a lonely trip. I feel that kind of beautifully expressed in the harshness of the fives and the tarot. Because like you and I could go out and see a show and we could both love it. And we could talk about that. We could share that, you know? But I can't exactly share with you why I loved it because you are you and I am me. And some of these things go beyond the limits of the words. Yeah. All right. Well, I'm looking at time, and here in 4, time is real. So I better get on with this show. 36 and 24. Again, like just sprung on by this trip of, hi, it's 3/6/24. And where the heck did time come from? Okay, so there's some time that I would suggest we can't deny. Do what you do, that's fine. But you know, a day is a day. And whether you on your flat earth believe that is the sun circling you, or you on the spinning planet with me believe that the sun rises and sets because earth spins with us on her. Regardless, the sun rises and sets every solar day. Yeah, 24 hours in time, right? Well, wait a second. Where does the hour come from? Let's get back to that. But a day is a day. It's called the primary astronomical motion, the spinning of your sky, bringing you such hits as sunrise and sunset, as day and night. And I would argue that your primary astronomical experience is day and night. The flowers open to receive the light and close at night to dream and rest. I think we are kind of wired to do the same, though some of us resist. Okay, nighttime is the right time. So day and night, y'all, primary. The secondary motion of the earth is our revolution. So our primary is rotation, spinning of the earth, which creates your relative experience of the spinning of the sky. The secondary motion is your orbit of the light, which brings from your point of view the sun moving about you once a year. Yes? There's 365 in about a quarter of a day, like seasonal space. The year, right? I mean, astrology starts there today, and they're just, this is Aries and this is Taurus, and what, you know, the signs, beautiful, secondary. What about houses? Or as we used to call them, places. And where does that come from? Okay, first of all, why do we have a 12 sign zodiac, right? Because The day is the day, the year is the year. Now, you can play with sidereal versus solar days. You can look at the truth that, like, when we talk about 24 hours, like, that's actually an average time. And some days are actually a little shorter and some days a little faster. And that's a fun trip, too. You can look at a sidereal year versus a solar year, and you should know that all the things that we're looking at when we speak about cycles are averages, like all that's important. Okay, but regardless, I think you can agree with me that a day is a day and a year is a year, and like that's real here in the real world, in this place with the appearance of time and space. I make the cross with my hand, by the way. You can see it in the chart, the so-called cross that you are nailed to, the horizon, which separates the visible, the above, from the invisible, the beneath, the ground, and the meridian, your north-south great circle, which separates the east from which goes up, from the west which goes down. And so we end up with quadrants of stuff beneath the ground coming up, or at least so we think, we can't see it. Above the ground coming up to its culmination, above the ground coming down to its rest, below the ground going down, or so we think, we can't see it, to its roots. And from the roots, it will rise, then reach, then rest and root again. And this is true not only for the sun every day, day and night, but also for moon. And Mercury, Venus, Mars, Jupiter, Saturn, Uranus, Neptune, Pluto, all those asteroids you kids are into these days, and the Chirons and the dwarf planets, and the Sirius and the zodiacal constellations and signs, which, by the way, are very different things, tale for another time. Yes? The roots, the rise, the reach, the rest, the primary motion. All right. Well, how long is it? Right. Importantly, like the time it will take for the sun to rise until it rises again, which is 24 hours, is different than like the time it takes for 0 Aries to rise and 0 Aries to rise again. That's a tropical day, which is more like 23 hours and 56 minutes. But what is an hour? That's where I want to get after with you today. And before we even go there, why 12? Some say that a 12-sign zodiac is just entirely arbitrary. And when we look back into the foggy rear view of our history and our origins, we look to Babylon and we find the Mula pin, which is 18 quote unquote signs, or was it 19 or 22, and when and how did they get to 12? If it was just totally arbitrary, you would think that the human would go 10 because of the 10 digits on our hands, at least in the human design. I don't want to offend anyone that has 9 or 7 fingers and thumbs and whatnot. Okay. 7 thumbs would be an interesting look. Anyway, weren't we taught that we count in tens because 10 fingers in the human design? Well, we can also find 12 on the hand and 14, 28, and some other things that maybe I'll show you, at least one of the pieces of that code today, because I'm going to take you to another amazing space. So why 12? Probably because there's about 12 moons a year. Now, if you're following the moon through the stars, so like moon at the Pleiades back to the moon at the Pleiades, that's called the sidereal month. It's 27.321 days. And there's 13.37 of those in a year. So if you're like a 13 moons person, well, there's more than 13, but it's probably moon at a star, like moon moving through lunar mansions, moon moving through the nakshatras. But most of us, when we think of moons, and most calendar systems that work with moons are working with the synodic month. Synod means meeting. All right. What meeting? Meeting of the moon and the sun in your sky. New moon, as we call it these days, the conjunction. And those are separated by 29 and a half days, of which those lunations or months, there are 12.37 in a year. So it's not exactly 12, but for those who are like working with loony solar time, like lunar phases, you come to a 12-month calendar, and then you have to do a bunch of calendar kung fu to synchronize that with the golden time, the seasonal time, if you like things like survival because you need food. And that brings me back to like 19 came screaming in earlier. 19 solar years is almost exactly equal to 235 lunations. I remember the 2 by 19 being the sun card of the tarot, and 235 looking a lot like 23.5, which we teach as the tilt angle of Earth, at least in our day and age. And that's a trip. All right. So let's talk about 36, because where did, so 12 and 12 signs likely comes from lunar calendars and lunar zodiacs, which predate the solar zodiacs. Why? Because you can't see which stars the sun is aligned to. You'll go blind. We can watch the moon moving through the stars. So the origins of like keeping time by watching happenings in space go back to the moon. But look, you only see the moon. Why? Because she's reflecting sunlight to your earthly eyes, just as we are told in the myths that Diana delivered her brother Apollo's birth. Here on Earth, you see, you can't look at the moon without seeing some sunlight. And this is true for Mercury and Venus and the other beings too, not the stars. All right. So, we kind of take for granted this 24 hours in a day thing. Where did that come from? I mean, interestingly, it's 12 and 12. And so I want to show you this, like on your hand. I imagine many of you have been initiated into this, but use your thumb to count. And if you're 4-fingered, you will find that each of your 4 fingers has 12 pads. And you can count with your sun: 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10, 11, 12. Okay. And then you have 2 of those. So you have the 12 hours of day and the 12 hours of night. So those who look to the origins of 12ness and 24 often will find their way to the astronomy of the moon. I will say it's in the geometry, number in space, and the seed of life. It's in the origin of a 12-tone octave, which is something that comes from the harmonic series and from nature. It's most precisely in the geometry, and then in the music, and then in the astronomy. Because again, there's 12.37 moons a year, which is not 12. Anyway, this is probably why we have a 12-sign zodiac, and then oddly, 12 hours of day and 12 hours of night. Well, there was an Egyptian system called the decans, which are 10-degree divisions of the zodiac as they are applied these days. It didn't used to be that way. It's a quite mysterious thing, but it was used to keep the year. So when the sun is moving with a star, you can't see that star. But when the sun moves along, then you'll find that star rising before the sun in the morning. That's called that star's heliacal rising. And it's one of the ways that we keep time of the sun moving through the stars during the course of the year. And it was like key to calendars and agriculture and nomadic societies and much more. So the decans in the decades in Egypt for many millennia, we believe, there were 36 decades of 10 days. So you can think of it kind of like a 10-day week. By the way, no offense, but Instagram's kind of weak. It won't let me go live for longer than an hour, and that's about to happen. So I'm going to end the stream there and only there. And I invite y'all, if you're watching there, to head over to my YouTube channel where this thing will continue at geminibrett.com/YouTube. Will take you right there. So I can type that in the Instagram chat, but links don't work there anyway. Just geminibrett.com/YouTube. Come join us over in that space. Maybe like the video before you head over if you would. And I'm going to push end at that one of these 3 spaces. All right. There will be a delay for folks who come over from YouTube to this place. So, while we're here, let me just show you another thing. If we head back to geminibrett.com/events buttons. So let's do that. geminibrett.com/events. You will find right at the top this button. Click here to register for the free Zoom webinar this Saturday, Saturn's Day, March 9th, 2024, 9 a.m. I hope to see you there. Just click that. It's totally free. I'm going to be speaking about dispositors, trees, as I feel like it's a nice place to go from last week's transmission, which was on the void of course moon and modern image and traditional as well. And because I'm like inspired by the chart of Frank Herbert, who wrote Dune. All right, so come see that. And then you don't need to click on this community discussion thing now. It's just like once we're there, we're going to move over to this link so we can have a meeting and you can share your wisdom and teach me and share your camera and your mic if you want to. Okay, but we'll start with a bit of a teaching, a webinar thing, which is going to be shorter than last week's for those of you who were there. As long as we're at my website, please know that if you're in California, I would love to see you at this in-person eclipse and eclipse cycle workshop on March 24th, followed by the night sky training. I will be doing eclipse teachings online on April 6th and 7th, leading to the total solar eclipse. I got to get that together, but when I do, there'll be a link right there. Okay. Anyway, astrology sessions. Any session with me right now, you can get 18% off. Sorry about that. So long as you book before April 8th, which is the date of the coming total solar eclipse. And you just use the coupon code Shadow Play. It's one word, Shadow Play. Type that in when you're checking out and you'll get 18% off. Love to be able to tune into your psalm with you. For some of you already have, you want to take it deeper or do some mentorship with me, whatever, that's available to you. Okay. So we're talking about the 36 and the 34. Let me just send a quick text because I'm going to be a little bit late. And so I'm really having a hard time understanding how to rectify the truth that supposedly the Egyptians were working with 36 decan stars, not only to keep the year, right? So again, just by periodic heliacal risings of stars, like the one that's most famously taught is Sophis, which you and I know as Sirius, brightest star in the sky. And it's said that that star would have its heliacal rise. And again, what does that mean? That means the sun has passed it by, and then now it rises before the sun in the morning time. All right. So at some latitudes on Earth, it said that Sophis disappears, or Sirius disappears for 70 days. And this is why those who had the right or honor of being mummified would go through a 70-day process. But there was a time in Egypt, or Kemet, the land we now call Egypt, when Sirius would reappear from the flames of the sun around the annual flooding of the Nile. All right, that's not annual anymore because they built a dam, which, by the way, completely just, well, I'm not going to go there. It did some bad things, but it did some good things too, because now there's no longer droughts, at least for much of Egypt. It just displaced the entire population. Anyway. So what you'll often be taught if you get into this research is the Egyptians had this Sothic calendar, as the Greeks would call it, based upon the heliacal rising of Sirius, which would rise when the Nile flooded at summer solstice time. Well, that's cute, and it was true for some time, but only for some time, because of the Earth's third motion, our primary motion, first motion, spin, day, secondary motion, orbit, year, tertiary motion, third motion, axial precession, which brings the signs, the tropical signs, earth signs, which are aligned to the rotational axis, the world tree, Gaia's spine. It brings the signs through the stars. It would therefore bring zero Cancer, which is where the North Pole leans arranging for tropical Cancer to be above Earth's Tropic of Cancer. That's the Earth zodiac, the tropical zodiac. Tropical Cancer is going to precess through the stars. So the relationship of Sirius and the Northern Hemisphere summer solstice, sun ingress 0 Cancer, right, is going to change over the years. So I always hear people when they're talking about the decans, talk about Sirius, the Sothic calendar, and this annual rising of Sirius with the flooding of the Nile. And then it often feels as if they're suggesting that this happened for the entirety of the Egyptian dynasties, which were thousands of years. It's like, no, y'all need to study some astronomy. I don't need to teach too much astronomy here. I don't do that unless we can take our time with beautiful pictures and so much more. I just want to read this. Time doesn't exist. It's only an instrument we need to place energy in space. Yeah, I'm not so sure about that. I'll just say like in this place, and you can say this place doesn't exist. So let me say like embodiment doesn't exist. It's just a game that the soul plays so that we can pretend that we're growing. Like I appreciate that, like religion, but it also, while it can be used very powerfully, and I've seen people do that, it can also just like really take us away from an embodied experience of soul growth, which is for me what we're here for. Jen, I see you write pole shift here, which precession likely does not do. It might be connected to it, but typically when they say pole shift, it's like the migration of the magnetic poles, which is different than true in north and true south. All right, so anyway, I got to get back on topic and finish this thing. We'll probably go 111, starting at 111. So the Egyptians had these 36 decanate stars. We don't really know what they are. We know some of them, like Orion, Sirius. If they were used to keep time during the night, which is what is suggested, but we really don't know. Some say like you would track the risings of the stars when it's night and we can see stars rising. That will help you determine like timing during the night, because what do you do when you can't follow the shadow of the sundial? It's only happening when the big star is up daytime, right? Full moon will do it, but you know. There's other things, candle clocks, incense clocks, not too accurate. Water clocks were developed over time, quite accurate actually, to keep the hours during the night, to know when you need to have your rituals, right? Because in some regards, it's like the sun goes through the underworld between resting and rising. I'm told that in Kemet, the land we now call Egypt, there wasn't a word for death. Instead, they would just say westing. And it was known that what wested, like what's set in the rest, would go through the underworld and then rise in the east, right? And so perhaps that means when you die, when you west, you'll go through your kind of underworld experience and then rise again in the east. Kind of a beautiful image, especially for those who are interested in kind of the whole incarnation trip. Yes? All right. Well, I'm all about telling time throughout the night with the stars. It's suggested that at a time this was done with rising stars, and then later it was moved towards watching stars reach or culminate, which in Egypt, like all northern hemisphere locations north of the Tropic of Cancer, happens due south. There's people now, teachers now, some Ophiuchian teachers, by the way, who are like telling you what the decans are and how they're seen in the king's chamber in the Great Pyramid. And they are suggesting that Cassiopeia is one of the decans. And I'm like, what? Because in Egypt, Cassiopeia doesn't rise and will never be in the south because she's circumpolar in the north. And the Egyptians very much respected and revered the circumpolar stars, which are those that never rise or set, they were seen as eternal beings, and you can imagine why. But there are like some pyramid shafts in Egypt that some consider unfinished because there's no top on them. Some even suggest the Great Pyramid was like this right now, where like the so-called ascending passageway is due south. Well, I see this all over the place. Like I've been to places in Arizona where there's writing like, oh, there was no archaeoastronomical alignments here. I'm like looking literally at like a throne that's looking due south. Why is that an archaeoastronomical alignment? Because in the northern hemisphere view, everything of the zodiac, like sun and moon and the stars of the zodiac anyway, will reach due south. So if you have a chair pointing that way, and especially if you have a shaft that's like eliminating you from seeing anything else, you can just keep time by watching stars go through that place. Cool. And so there's a system of 36 decans, which can keep the year, but can also keep the day, or at least the night. But the issue is the Egyptians also had 24 hours in a day, 12 hours of day and 12 hours of night. And I just don't see how you can have both. Because let's just say we have 24 hours of 60 minutes. The 60 minutes, by the way, comes from Babylon. And I'm realizing I'm going to have to continue this another time. All right. But I think we're all at our limit anyway. And I really should do it more as an organized class, so we can go through this a little bit more linearly, though time certainly is cyclical. Anyway, if you look at 24 hours and you divide those divisions into 60 minutes, there's 1,440 minutes per day. Well, if I divide that by 36, I get 40. So it's like you're working with these decan stars that would divide time into smaller sections than a system of 24 would. It's just really hard to do 36 and also do 24. I'm just tripping on it. Some say it's like, because with 36, there's always 18 above the ground and 18 below. But when the sun sets, there's too much light on the horizon and the opposite horizon to see 3 in the west and 3 in the east. And so those 18 minus the 3 and the 3 and the 6 are 12. But still, like, you would be dividing time into smaller segments than you would with a system of 24. It's very difficult there. And people don't seem, I find, to like see the problem in this. And it's a problem like I haven't solved yet. You know, I have a mind that wants to solve the equation, and so it gets pretty frustrating, but I'll just stay after it. So where I really wanted to go today, and I'm going to have to do this later, and maybe I'll just make it the subject for a transmission on Tuesday next, and I'll just get right to the point, which is canonical hours, civil hours, planetary hours. PK, that's a interesting way to see the 36, by the way. Yeah, so in Egypt they had 36 decans, so 36 times 10 days, and then they would have a 5-day period that some call 5, like day at a time. Most suggest that they weren't doing a leap year thing. I disagree. And anyway, so more of that for another time. So what I'm going to do next week, if for those of you who are still here, and if you're on my email list, and I really hope you will be, so geminibrett.com to do that. Just right at the top of the page. That way I can just send you Zoom links for free classes or invitations for paid things and different events and whatnot directly. And so geminibrett.com at the top of the page, you can just sign up for my email list. Please do. And please, by the way, if you've been digging this video, please like the video. That helps a ton. If you have folks that you know who might dig it as well, please share it around. Like, I would really appreciate the support. I'm about to have a baby and I'm freaking out. And you know what? Here's the truth. Scorpiana is going to have the baby. So I'm also freaking out for her, but I'm trying to figure out, you know, how to take care of the children and whatnot. Anyway, so it really does help a ton. Like if you subscribe to the channel, if you like the video, if you share it around, like it's a big deal. It's really good for us to support the people who we tune into. And I hope you'll do that for me. And I really appreciate the greatest gift, which is the present of your presence. So I'm going to be on a plane at this time next week, next Wednesday. I really meant to start these weekly Wednesdays once I got back, but I just got a surge last week, as I described for those of you who were here live. I'm going to do probably a pre-recorded thing. Or I don't know. I'll either go live on Tuesday at 11 a.m. or if I can find the space time, I might pre-record a little thing around this subject of time and decans and hours and where did the 24-hour system come in, and we'll see it on our hands. I made this really fun little discovery this morning at 1 a.m. Of working with planetary hours and such, and you'll just see the beautiful blend of the 7 and the 24 if you haven't seen it already. It's like, how could these have come from different places? And it suggested it did, that the 7 days of the week named for the planets came from the Chaldeans, it's Babylon, and that the 24 hours of the day in the horoscopic tradition came from Egypt. And either they were doing this together or it was just two parts of a puzzle that were created in different places, but like needed to fit. And that all happened like in the Hellenistic time. So yeah, I'm hoping I can find the time to actually create, because it would be really nice to do this with some great imagery and whatnot. A little thing. And then if I do, instead of going live on Tuesday to transmit it, I'll just schedule it to show up on Wednesday next week at 11 p.m. I'll probably do that. So Wednesday, March 13th, 11 a.m. Pacific time. It won't show on the Facebook page where some of you now are. It won't show on the Instagram page, but it will premiere here on my YouTube page at that time. So if you're subscribed to this channel, if you ring the bell so you can be notified when I'm live, please do. You'll get a little message about that. And if you're on my email list, and I hope you are, I'll send out a little email about that sometime soon too. All right. Hey, Kat, if you're listening, I'm so sorry I'm late for our jam. I'll text you right now and I look forward to it. All right, everyone. If you want to have a jam, if you want to connect, if you want to look into your charts together, please holler GeminiBreath.com/sessions. If you do book a session before April 8th, make sure to use the coupon code SHADOWPLAY, one word, at checkout, and you'll get 18% off. I'd love to tune into your song with you. See you in space, y'all.